the stock market, meaning companies, new highs.
I'm not fucking leaving.
The show goes on.
They're nuts. They know nothing.
An online network called Internet.
Well, it's very hip to be on the internet right now.
Welcome, my degenerates. The rest of your life starts right now on Market Mania. I'm your host, Brett Ritchie, filling in for Brian Micon. Today, hopefully I do him justice. Market Mania is the no bullshit approach to all financial markets, from Bitcoin and darknets to political betting, and of course, the largest casino in the world, the U.S. stock market. I'm your host, temporarily, Brett Ritchie, former pro poker player, currently head of BlitzPick. We are a pretty cool platform for sports bettors, launching soon. Joining me are Matt Glantz, a former options specialist on the Philadelphia Stock Exchange, and a very special guest today, Flip Pidot, founder, the CEO of American Civics Exchange, a market curator on Predictit for over 5 years, and the host of Old Bull TV, a channel and podcast network focused on political prediction markets. The whole thing is put together by Tony, the producer, and let's get into the show. Tony, what do we got for topics today? All right, kicking things off, the presidential odds. I hope you guys saw this. Obviously, you probably did. Trump got bet up quite a bit over the weekend. He was looking at about a 2-1 underdog, heading the wrong way for Biden. Flip, Trump's now back up to about 40 cents, plus 150 in the American betting odds. What do you make of this sort of Trump rally in the betting markets?
Yeah, well, the rally seems to be part result of Trump's own rallies. He's back on the road and getting big crowds again. So that kind of fires up the MAGA base, whether or not it's a real reflection of, improvement in the odds or just MAGA driven bettors betting him up. But you've also got this, Hunter Biden laptop situation sitting out there that's still unfolding. And I think a lot of people are speculating on potentially a pop, even if they don't think it necessarily increases his odds of winning. Probably people setting up for at least a short-term pop in the Trump odds if something really, even more salacious comes out of that.
All right, so we're going to get to the whole Hunter story a bit later. Matt, you are pretty adamant that no one is changing their vote. You're also heavy on Biden. You said you're all in on Biden already. What were you feeling over the weekend seeing Trump's odds just keep rising?
So, anytime I see the odds change, I look at the polls, see if there's any kind of new polls coming in that change our projections, and there really isn't. I believe that this is a case of recency bias based on 2016. And just everyone the entire left has trauma remembering 2016, what happened back then. And, can this happen again with Hillary? Things come out late in the game. And now you got this Hunter Biden thing hanging over their heads. So people get nervous. And also, like Flip said, Trump just started on his campaign trail, his rallies. And when you see him up there, there's no one better at these rallies than Trump. For someone that, not a Trump fan, and I'm betting against him, but he really, really brings people to the stage and he enjoys it. And you can tell he's got unlimited energy and he produces votes that way. So for those people, I give him credit. And that's why I think people see him on TV, see him rally after rally, and they want to bet on him.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. As we'll get to, I guess, in the next topic, let's just move on. 25 million have already voted. So a lot of those people are voting for Biden, which makes this odd surge a little tricky. Matt, what do you make out of this big early vote?
Well, that was expected. So 25 million voted. I think Flip could probably verify this for me. We're expecting about 150 million votes total in this country. Does that sound fair?
I think that sounds about right.
So 25 million so far. So 1/6 already voted. So those guys aren't changing their votes. Their votes are in, no matter where they are. I think 53% of those votes came in as Democrats, 36% Republicans, the rest independents. But that's expected. All those early voting is always more Democratic heavy. And I don't think the odds would be affected by how many early votes came in, because we weren't expecting anything like previous elections because of COVID and how people are more willing to vote. But I will say that mail-in voting, online voting, basically because of the push from social media, I can't get on Facebook or Twitter without getting pushed an ad for, vote by mail, sign up for voting here. So I think that leans to the left. What's your thoughts on that, Flip?
Yeah, I think it probably does on balance. To your point about the 25 million already voted, and the 53-36 breakdown, I totally agree that it's kind of in line with what was expected. Obviously, we expected more Democrat early votes than Republican, especially with the Biden camp aggressively soliciting and courting that vote by mail, and Trump having sort of pushed it down throughout the campaign. So it's hard to know. In retrospect, we may look back at that number and say, wow, that was way too high for Democrats, or it was not nearly what they wound up needing. With no cycle to compare it to, it's hard to know if that's a good number for Democrats or not. But the one thing we it is probably safe to say is that the more that votes early, and if it's currently a sixth or approaching a fifth of the expected electorate having already cast their vote, it sort of fixes the outcome or renders the outcome less susceptible to unfolding events. So things like the Hunter Biden stuff like the second debate, really, coming later in this week, they have gradually, obviously, less and less impact. So it starts to eat away at the volatility remaining in the race. And if you have a race like you do with a very clear front runner, at least per the polling, you should start to see those Trump odds lengthening. Again, we haven't. If anything, we've seen them start to shorten just in recent days. But as that 25 becomes 30, 35, even with an enormous jaw-dropping October surprise, it gets harder and harder for Trump to make up the differential.
No doubt.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of those sort of late-breaking events that can change the shape of the election, Nancy Pelosi over the weekend said in regards to the stimulus, you have 48 hours to make a deal if you want one done before the election. Are you following these stimulus talks at all, Flip? And do you think that a deal or no deal will have a bearing on the election?
Yeah, I pretty much expected a deal to get done. I mean, it was noted today that it's now been over a year, October 16th of last year, that Trump and Pelosi actually spoke in person. But, they both seem to be calming the fires, cooling the fires a little bit. They clearly are talking, or Mnuchin is talking with Pelosi, other of Trump's surrogates are, and he's now saying he wants even a bigger deal than Pelosi is offering. So I think that's sort of the default assumption. I think it only backfires further on Trump if they don't get a deal, and he doesn't want to be seen, that kind of being his brand. Look, I'm the deal maker, as the guy that can't get a deal done. I think he'd much rather come down, the hill of Santa Claus with a big bag of cash for the American public and for the stock market, obviously. So I expect a deal to get done. I don't know the exact timing, but I think at this point that's pretty well reflected in the betting odds on the political markets, but also in the financial markets.
Matt, what do you see there?
Okay, so let's just cut to the chase. Put all the politics aside or actually focus on the politics. And you'll just know that Trump wants the stimulus checks out there so people see his name on the check right before the election. And he wants, also the other reason is because the stock market will go up if they get a stimulus deal. So there's two reasons to help his election chances. That's why he wants the deal done now. That's exactly the same reason why Pelosi won't let a deal happen right now. She's going to lead him on, keep lead him on further, asking for more, telling him he's got a deal, then backing away, because she doesn't want people to see a check with his name on it right before the election. She'd be happy to give you a stimulus deal if the checks are going to go out the day after the election. But right now she knows, it's not going to help her colleagues, so she wants to stop it. And it's just politics. But in reality, people need a stimulus check. Both sides want to give the people a stimulus check. It's all about the election. So I don't think anything's going to get done.
I would like to see the checks out, but I agree with you. It's really become political at this point. And then it begs the question, depending on who wins, now what happens in that sort of dead period post-election and pre the new inauguration, depending who wins, who's going to control things. Whoever loses may be spiteful and just say, well, now we're not doing a deal either.
Once the election's decided, it'll be a lot easier to get stimulus checks out because everyone's going to be on the same page at that point.
Will people tilt? I don't know. We'll see. I would still like to see it ahead of the election. Obviously, Trump would too, but we will see. So we touched on this subject a little earlier. Hunter Biden, this is, I guess, every election, there seems to be one of these scandals that comes out toward the end. Flip, what do you make of Hunter Biden? Is it going to affect this race?
Yeah, I think it's going to affect the race. I mean, one way or another, it's going to be a key point of discussion. Even the kind of meta story, the burying of the story by Twitter and Facebook, and then the reaction to it. And then is the FBI looking into it? Is it Russian disinformation? You have the DNI coming out today and saying, no, it's not disinformation. That's the counter-programming narrative. So there are all these kind of meta stories that are surrounding it. And, this story, it's sort of the perfect October surprise and the perfect one for 2020. And that gives both sides a lot to latch onto. One, Biden and Hunter and Joe, they haven't denied the specifics. They haven't denied it's his. Biden has called a lid for 4 days until Thursday, saying he's in debate prep, but conveniently doesn't have to speak about it. But by the same token, it went through Giuliani and through Bannon, who've obviously had credibility problems on Oppo research before. It's reported that the New York Post reporters, some weren't comfortable with it, that Fox News division turned it down initially. So it very well may be that all these things are basically true, that it's legitimate, the provenance of it is legitimate, that it arrived in Republican operatives' hands through a shady chain of custody, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, it was cooked up, that it was disinformation. It does, of course, raise the possibility that, real information could have been salted with worse fake information. And so, again, it kind of gives both sides lots to pick apart. But of course, only one side wants to pick it apart right now, and it's the pro-Trump side that really does need an earth-shattering, Hail Mary to change the calculus here. So that's why I think you're going to see all fronts on that side really, really pushing on this, at least from now until Thursday, hoping to pin Joe down on Thursday night in the debate, because I think that's the last leg of this race.
Matt, you following the Hunter story?
So, who knows what's true? Like, there's none of us can figure it out. We'll leave it up to the professionals, the FBI, the politicians, to figure out what their side of the story they like to focus on. But we can go into the next subject, Trump's strategy. That's really the factor for me. Like, how is this Biden laptop story going to affect the election? And the story was building all weekend, and it was set to have a huge, huge day today, and he just ruined it for himself. It's just like the dumbest strategy possible. So you'll see the Caitlin Collins tweet there on a call with campaign staff with all the reporters listening in. Trump says people are tired of hearing about coronavirus. People are saying whatever, just leave us alone. They're tired of it. People are tired of hearing Fauci and all these idiots. He's been there for 500 years. So Trump entirely changes the conversation. He's such an idiot. He had this day to just focus on Hunter, let them focus on Hunter's Biden and say nothing. And he totally changed the subject. He's trashing Fauci. He's bringing the conversation back to COVID. It's just a terrible campaign strategy in my mind, media strategy. And it's just a loser for him. The more we focus on COVID, the worse off he is. The more we focus on Biden's laptop, Biden's son, Hunter's laptop, the better off he is. But he just totally changes the conversation. And it's just another same old for Trump.
That actually reminds me very much of the last debate when he wouldn't let Biden talk. Biden can hang himself when he talks. Trump wouldn't let him talk. He just kept jumping in. And then the narrative was Trump interrupted Biden.
His own worst enemy.
Yeah. What about you, Flip? What do you think about Trump's strategy?
Oh, yeah. No, the lack of message discipline is extremely on brand for Trump. And, as I was alluding to before, this is, I think, kind of the one possible play he has left to execute. The goods have to really be there, but he also has to execute it well, because Biden's going to go into a very kind of bunkered down defense, and the media obviously aren't going to give Trump an assist. So he's got to, even if there's something truly damning in there, like actual documentary proof of Biden himself, benefiting from the sale of his office and access to him, and that he's lied about it in public before, something truly that damning that he can't get away with. Still, given the early voting, given, the media disposition, and given that we're in kind of the ninth inning here already, he's got to be disciplined in the messaging of it, and he's not. And there's no reason to really expect that he would be. So he's going to have to kind of, have several fortuitous trips through this minefield to make it work out, even if this October surprise is all that his supporters hope it will be. So it's
when your opponent's seemingly in trouble in the media, you just don't go into the media and put the focus on yourself. But he just can't.
But that's not Trump. I mean, that's Trump in a nutshell. I mean, he's not going to be a shrinking violet and say, you take it away here, Joe. He wants to be out there being the leader of the three-ring circus. If he's not the center of attention, he feels that he's not doing all he should be doing, even when it's a terrible strategy. So
we'll see how it unfolds. And as you said, we're in the ninth inning here. The debate is really the key event of this ninth inning. What do you think is going to happen in this debate, Flip? Can Trump change the calculus? I mean, his odds are already surging. So can he turn it around and really take this election?
I wouldn't say that he cannot. I don't think he's likely to, because, again, I think Biden, even if there's really bad stuff in there, he's got 72 hours with nothing to do other than concoct a perfect answer to each of those things. And it's not as though he's going to have to do it in a courtroom setting under cross-examination. He's got to do it with possibly gentle, favorable questioning from a moderator. Of course, we saw what happened with the second debate moderator. There's no conspiracy theories required here to show that he was favoring Biden and then lied about it. So every reason to think that Biden's not going to get too beat up by the moderator. So Trump's got to parry and get his way in there and actually ask some pointed, quick, pithy, hard to wriggle out of questions and have that discipline that he's not known for. And actually keep pressing him on it, because Biden can have a few canned ways of saying this is a distraction from this, and that, or we'll tell you that is true is X, Y, and Z, and quickly eat up the clock, and the moderator goes on to the next topic. So 90 minutes to do it, but it's not a whole lot of time if the playing field is not favorable and the player in question is not all that disciplined.
Matt, what do you think about this debate?
So this is the last big debate, and Trump's behind in the election, so he needs to have a big showing. A draw for this debate is not going to help him. It's actually going to hurt him. If he wins, the debate slightly, it's not going to help him. He needs to crush Biden in this debate. He needs to go all out. And if any other result happens from this debate, Biden's just going to sail to the victory. He's just way ahead in the polls. I know people think the silent majority is there, going to change the polls. But this time in 2016, as 2 weeks before the election, Hillary was 6.5% ahead in the national polls. Today, Biden's over 9% ahead. So that's another 2.5% difference, which, that's really hard to overcome. He really just has to use this debate. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he needs to go. I'm sure he'll go all in, but he just needs to have a hugely successful debate to have a real shot at this election.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will say this, though. To me, it's been very interesting as we watch Trump's price rise. I don't know anybody that's eager to bet Trump now. I know a lot of people that are big bettors, 6-7-figure bettors that are looking to hammer Biden. I know this one fund that was like, we're looking to lay infinite on Biden minus 215. This was before Trump's odds started coming up. So I don't know where this Trump money is coming from. Maybe it's the campaign. Maybe it's somebody that's trying to manipulate public sentiment is one of the rumors. Or there's people that know something we don't know, and we're all in for a surprise in a couple weeks because maybe Biden's the one in trouble, and we don't know.
Trump needs something to change. He needs something to come up, another surprise, like Comey with Hillary, something to come up for him to win the election.
All right. Well, looking forward to the debate. It is going to be on Thursday, and we will be covering it here on Market Mania. And that is going to be time to move on to one of the favorite subjects is picks of the day. I don't have any safety goggles. I don't have the non-investment advice hat that Micon has. But what I do have is Flip. Flip, what do you have for us as your pick of the day?
I think despite the hole that Trump is in, looking on PredictIt, one of the more interesting ways to play the presidential election is at the state level and specifically at the margin level within a state. So I've been looking at Florida, the popular vote margin, and you've got there about a 12 bracket, 13 bracket market with brackets 1 percentage point wide. So you can buy, 4 or against Dems to win by 1, by 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, GOP, et cetera. The polling in Florida has it still pretty tight. That's kind of flipped back and forth as almost as pure a toss-up as you can have until fairly recently. Biden started to widen a little bit of a lead, but still trading kind of at like 52, 53 cents. So only a slight favorite to win. And yet you can bet against the kind of blowout brackets. For instance, for about 50 cents, in other words, for roughly even money, you can bet against him getting Biden winning by more than 3%. If you simply short the 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and 6+ brackets, if you short all those together, you get roughly even odds that it comes in with either Trump winning or losing by less than 3%. And the averages have Biden ahead, I think, by about 1.5 points, maybe 2 points in Florida, with no recent polls having him with a lead of more than 3. So especially given how good the Florida GOP has been historically at returning their vote by mail and absentee ballots, the likelihood that Trump outperforms his lead in 2020, outperforms his deficit in 2020 in Florida seems to me to be better than a 50-50 prospect, especially because in 2016, it was one of the states outside the Rust Belt where Trump outperformed too. He did about 1 percentage point better than the polling average had him going into Election Day. So If I'm looking for a way to
I like it.
scrape a little bit of an advantage out of Florida, that's where I see the good pricing.
Makes a lot of sense. Matt, what do you got for us?
So I like Trump to have a small victory in Florida. I like Biden to have a small victory in Pennsylvania. I think those two are the most key states. And then I have Biden winning the election, the Electoral College, 329 to 210. And he should sail to victory. And I think that it'll be decided that night. I think the networks will call it by midnight on election night.
That's an interesting bet. If you can bet on when it will be called. So, all right, for me, I'm going over to Betfair. I'm going to the Rust Belt. I've seen some interesting, I would say, readings in the tea leaves on Betfair. I like Trump to win Michigan and Wisconsin. You can get between 2 to 3 to 1 on those states. I've seen some people looking for big money on the Trump side, really outlier positions, 20, 25K in a market where usually positions are $200 or $300 on the Trump side. I like to follow the money. I'm rolling with Trump in the Rust Belt, Michigan and Wisconsin. If you can get, I would say at about 2.5 to 1 or higher. And that is going to do it for the show today. The world is pretty fucked up out there, as Micon usually says. But in the words of Lil Wayne, it's a dirty world, but it still spins. You can't do nothing about it but try to live in it. That's what we're going to do here on Market Mania. We will see you tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow. But for now, it's lights out.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Brad.
If I don't have my medicine, I never sleep. If I don't have my medicine, I never sleep. If I don't have, I never sleep. I never sleep. If I don't have my medicine.
Time to right the wrong. So your hands in the air if you like the song. If you're going over there, take it twice as long. Last time ain't talking about Tylenol. Oh, I bet you'd like to know. You can come around the way if you're trying to go. If you want to switch lanes for a pot of gold, or a domino, out of control. The usual, get mad cause I'm looking at your girl.
Switch it up.
I do it so much louder than everything you've heard. Everybody heard, got the word that the world wasn't turning. Act like you're in a jury, however turning, wow, we're turning. Can't lie like this is to be burning. Don't act like you're in a daze. I imagine to look the other way. Couldn't clear space on my mind, was afraid of the time. Strobe black like in the moonlight. I'm in the mood right now,